John Charles, I'm live. I'm in West Seattle right now. I am on the beach by the Fauntleroy Ferry Dock. Uh, these videos are very, very important, and some horrible things are happening in Seattle. I'm trying to report it because it's happening across the country. But this city is real bad because of the release of finance, because of the Joseph family and Pete's and Howard Schultz and the Schulman gangs, linked to old crimes with cattle and things like that. Crimes against my grandfather or grandparents changing their names, their last names, and so forth. Right now, we have 45 reported murders of children who had markers for the banking that are international over the past 3 days. They're white mainly and they're Christian. The people trying to cash are of different ethnicities and they're being pushed into the city, and the children being pushed in from other cities as well. So they're coming from different locations and somebody is pushing them away from their parents, and they're traveling here and they're telling them they're putting money in the family accounts, and then they take the family's banking after they put the money in the accounts, saying they're linked to the trust fund by blood or whatnot. So they're being lured in by this mafia in Seattle. I was in Bellevue yesterday. The demographics are changing rapidly in the city, in different cities. Bellevue in particular, the population has generally been the majority Caucasian. Uh, what's walking on the streets is about 5% Caucasian, East Indian and Chinese take up the rest, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Very large Chinese moves. So they have moved into that city, and this has been reported a long time ago, went into the banking when Joseph was in Perkinskoy, and other gangs came in and started taking money out of the other banks, revealing the Wells Fargo, the Chase. Oracle was there, and so was Glazer. They're involved in the crime and moving credit cards illegally out of my family, as well as other businesses in that area. Symantec, I believe, is one of the companies that's very big. Their CEO and wife were very big in trying to leave the country. Millions moved out, and the Olafson Lindemann gang, which is linked to Lee Johnson and Chuck Olson, Dave Olson, uh, uh, Sandoval, Iverson, Kennedy. It's a very long list, but they've linked to a Danish Nielsen. They've linked to European mafias to come in and take this trust fund, which had antiquities for the Holy Roman Empire, which my family's bloodline and my family had tried to preserve, and that was broken into by Tim Hudson and the port commissioners of Seattle and the people who built the Space Needle. But even prior to that, the grandparents and German families that lived in the Seattle area, blaming, using excuse of Holocaust and things like that to break into this trust fund. This actually, it started more around World War One, and when the family's investments were coming over here, and um, several families compromised who were involved in properties here, and but it's gotten worse since the antiquities were brought for the museum exhibit for the family, Brunswick Lunenburg family, which, if you don't know the bloodline, it goes up to Matilda of Flanders and Matilda of Tuscany, and that's my direct bloodline, and Welf, and actual King Richard, and Matilda of England, marriage to my family, those marriages to my family, also the royal suite. So we had antiquities that were given to us, and a lot through the Hollis Treaty, and a lot came back through the Weimar Republic approvals. So this is very important. What's really bad, though, is we have an intrusion on the police force, and they're linked to a Gulbin, Bolam, Bobless, Dubai, Germany, France. This Gulbin has been moving around the world, and very bad with the Ottingen and Baron gang in Las Vegas. We have old finance across the country. Many names coming up, but right now they're trying to use Skolben, Shoblin, Soblin, and the Ethiopian bankers, the Northern African, East African contingents are real strong in the European banks. So they're trying to lure people in and then get them out of the country and then strip the bank accounts. This is a real long story, but this is an emergency and we're not getting support in Seattle. My trust fund and all my bank accounts being drained under my father, my grandparents, and my grandparents' wives and their families. So Myers, the list, it's a long list. White, Myers, the Sweetman name comes up, the Salmon name comes up, my uncle Dagliash, this has been stolen by a Tobless Mafia. It's huge. These aren't small accounts. These are multi-million and a lot of railroad and things like that. But for me to stay focused right now is really hard with all the things going on. So I can't really explain a lot, except I do have more information about this Johnson, this Norwegian gang, or not Norwegian, but Scandinavian. The Hyatt properties are being run by somebody named Fred Johnson is trying to take over my properties on some of the shipping. Also, Hablin is, I believe it's Hablin, I'm not sure. These people are trying to run accounts illegally, and they're linked to attorneys, Judy Warren, that name's coming up too, in my shipping accounts. But a lot of murder and replacement of these attorneys, like such as Amy Mecklenburg in Europe, traveling with my finance, very illegal, like Bruce Harrell, the mayor here. These people possibly doubled and replaced, I'm not sure. But Fred Johnson with Hyatt, and also the name Pryler. So Hilton, I don't have the names, but Hilton, Marriott, Howard Johnson's, my old travel lodge, these accounts are being robbed. Even worse than that, my auto accounts are being robbed across the dealership, the licensing accounts that were very old in their savings are being robbed. They all have to be replaced. Nobody is banking legally. All these banks need to understand this money was supposed to be passed to me by bankers. What they're doing is banking somebody that's dead. Even my grandparents, like this Michael Roth in my Rothwein, Seligman, all my Psy, all my European finance. Michael Roth is a murderer. He's traveling, he's on the loose. He's linked to Rheinbull in Germany and a strong contingent in Germany. This situation with the hotels, though, has been very hard to identify. But we're also linking the bank CBRE and their illegal moves to Germany right now. I do have names, but like I said, I'm having a hard time right now with remembering all the names. So it may come back to me in a few minutes. There's no reason why CBRE would be in these accounts. But we do know that they're using the executive field to move my finance out, and same thing in Vegas. So this video may go off real quick. It's gone on for a long time right now, but JTM is a construction company. Another is WG Clark. And JTM is linked to this mafia, Tomlinson, Mortensen, Koblin, out of London, Criley. Anyway, what they're doing is they're going through JTM, and what they've done is gone into the U.S. plywood, the lumber, American accounts, the auto accounts, using JTM construction right by the Boeing field, and then running out using names of people that used to run businesses there. So the old Ice Trust was run there. The old original Rainier Brewery, the Stockades, were right down in that area where my property is legally bound to the trust, as well as the accounts. We know now that David Saby was involved with the David Saby data center, and they were involved about 2 miles from Boeing data center, stealing information and then trying to sell it and move it out with this mafia. Dob is another name that's linked to this. It's Poland. Really bad Eastern Europe, just mafia linked to Scandinavia. In these old royal accounts, one antiquity could be worth, $1 million. So there are probably 8,000 antiquities that are stolen. This is how big the crime is. Plus, somebody named Ribeless saying she'll destroy everything to cover up what she's taken. So she's linked to University of Washington. This lady is a murderer, and she's willing to kill to cover up the amount of art that she's stolen from the Brunswick-Lüneburg collections, which includes those families in Italy and Belgium and England. Must understand that Richard the Lionheart was an uncle to my family, and our children in Brunswick-Lüneburg were used as ransom to save his life. So this is a real trust, and antiquities were collected for this museum exhibit and are stolen by Charlie Wright, the shoe carts, several families trying to cover up the murders of my father. Several doublings, and I've talked about the doubling of my father as a child. We know that's now linked to Boeing Corporation in a cover-up to not pay property leases with the Al-Hanoffs and Ben Royas. Huge property issues for them in debt when my father tried to collect in the late 50s after the birth of my brother and I. So we know now that we had stepbrothers or 3 cousins that were here that looked a lot like my brother, or else they have found an area under Pioneer Square where they have seen a coffin that marks Rick and John with a body of a child that says Rick. So if they brought in one of the stepbrothers or of my cousins, that may have grown up as my brother. So it's created a lot of confusion, but a lot of murders, and they kept us separated, and the other ones didn't know. They had to grow up over towards a different part of town. So this created a lot of problems and a lot of annoyingness, but now we have the facts. This also involves, about the time of one of their murders, Virginia Beach identified on the satellite with NASA one of the deaths, and they moved in on the properties above Lake Washington Floating Bridge where they were raised, and went in and took old information that we believe when my parents were killed, they were separated from the kids, and a lot of that was held up in that area. India was very involved in breaking into that with Rokum or Rakim and the women who claimed they're royal Indians. It's a big group that travels around the world, but the Virginia Beach naval brass, or whatever they were, lieutenants, who came to Seattle about the time of the attempted murder on me, were taking finance at the Hacienda Apartments with the Dyke family and Jeff Berger, who are now identified as huge criminals internationally. This is a lot to take in, but right now what we have is a mass murder of children being brought in and their family banking being taken and their families being tracked and murdered in other countries. A lot of these children don't have parents anymore. They are Christian. Seedless is with CYO, Catholic Youth Association. We believe she's very involved in taking these children on trips around the country. This is not a Catholic trust fund. It is not there are Catholic accounts, because it's Holy Roman Empire, but as we became Puritans and came into this country and created this, as Massachusetts Colony, second group, Winthrop, recorded by Frothingham, was linked to my family. So this is all real. This isn't a joke. And this ferry dock is linked to the properties. It's called John Charles Shipping, registered in New York, Connecticut, early American, one of the oldest shipping lines that ran into this country. It precedes the Plymouth colony. So whatever is going on right now with the Defense Department and his claims of boats almost running into. We have a mass murder in Seattle. The Chinese don't own Bellevue, okay? Neither does East India. And neither does this Gulbin group that won't protect children or protect people or protect my trust fund. They continue to divvy it up and send it to Dubai and different countries, France, Germany. Bernardo Arnault is illegal. Michael Roth is illegal. Jill Brandmacher is illegal. Baby Bernstein, Ari Bernstein, who stole the Chauvelin satellites and took them to Israel and tried to make it a Jewish trust fund. They are on the loose, and they're involved in the murder of William Boeing Jr. He's missing. So this is my Boeing money, and Fred Charles is dead, and it hasn't been moved to me, and my brother murdered and doubled. This is my money that Boeing won't give me, and the Rensselaer original loans on Lake Union, where John Charles Shipping was the accounts linked to the payment lines, and they run to New York for some reason. I'm right here. So whoever's been taking it, they say Judy Warren's involved, Holben is involved, and several others on South Lake Union. Holben, very dangerous right now. We believe he was murdered, and it is Black Mafia that uses it, and this man uses a torch, and he kills kids and cuts them open to take the markers if they're inserted, which they weren't supposed to be. So that's Sue Seeley who did this. And other bankers in Seattle. John Brown, the attorney, is involved in this. JD, who's an attorney. Richard Jones, who's an attorney. Judge Fieser is an attorney, or a federal judge here. I don't know if he's federal. But this judge also involved, and one Greek judge is involved in mass murder linked to the Karras family. Tony Karras, Nick Karras, TK Karras used to run Academy Press in Seattle. Chris Bennis and Chris Economo, who's stolen my stocks and tried to travel around the world as somebody in horse racing. My horse racing accounts, her name's Yearling. She's very involved in opening these accounts right now. A lot of them, some went to Eddie Kennelly, some went to Aiden O'Brien. Some are going to Emerald Downs right now. Everybody at Emerald Downs is illegal. I don't want them in my money. I have nothing to do with them. All that money has to be recovered. If they can't run on their own, then close them. Just close them down. What they do is murder people. David Noosh, okay, Wesley Ward, involved in international racing. Chris Loseth in Canada. Hugh Wales' name is coming up. Tim DeUssi is the Ducey family, DeUssi, very involved in this crime, very horrible. And then the Black Mafia, Caller, the Staleys, the Stablins, and Christopher Breland and Lynn Ballin out of Baltimore. Christopher Breland on wires all over the country, murdering. What they do is, if people get wired to this trust fund, what they do is sit over the top and wait to see what you're doing. Pick up your passwords. They'll get over the top people that are wired and try to, if they have a higher wire, like a military wire, I have a federal wire, and that's supposed to give me protection. Obama knows that. Trump knows that. I'm not NASA. I'm not getting the pay lines or the protection on this federal wire that I am owed and deserve. Nor did my brothers or my cousins or stepbrothers. The Mosses, the Griffins, they are not Brooks, they are not my real family. My family was doubled, and they're involved in the corruption of Boeing with the name Belpin and Moss. And we're trying to identify who really murdered everybody. It could be Saab Corporation. My dad sold airplane parts, and we also had pay lines. So he was actually merging his interests in Boeing when he was working there, when he was killed. When we were raised, my father was a pilot. He flew in MacArthur to Japan for the surrender. When we were raised, that's what he did in the beginning. All of a sudden, he worked at the mailroom, and they never said that he ever did that job. They tried to cover it up. It is on my birth certificate. Lehman signed it. The Lehmans are involved in the crime. The Liebermans were involved in the crime yesterday. Mark Friedlander tried to make a jewelry move with Goldfarb Jewelers in Bellevue. It's a very big move, and they've done it for a long time. And they're linked to Retief Goosen and the Diamonds, the De Beers accounts linked to my family. In golf, okay? They're golfers, pro golfers. There's a ton linked. Like tennis, same problem. Federer, the old Eder Crane accounts. Roger Federer was in those accounts. But today, last thing I'm going to talk about, The Bing family ran MGM. They know I have interests. There's something wrong. I've been down there twice and I can't get any communication with what is a nice family. Once linked to crime and corruption, but also pro tennis. Martina Navratilova was somebody who was down in Vegas, supposedly linked to her because she played pro tennis, the Mrs. Bing. Now I've seen a double today. She's linked to Chopless Mafia, okay? It's Eastern Europe Mafia linked to Churlos. They're up here, they're trying to run money. I'm worried and concerned if the real Bing family is alive because Scotty Aoki is down there and he's running accounts illegally. Michael Mina's down there illegally with my finance. And Brimbaugh and the Bezos sale of my MGM that was illegal. Linked to Krasner's illegal distribution, to Icon, Brumbaugh, the West Seattle distribution of my finance illegally, and sales of RCA Victor, Samsung. It's a horrible situation here. We need support in Seattle. If the Defense Department wants to continue to play fool with their black military, their black government, and try to cover up the crimes of these black